Hey class, I'm just going to talk through a little bit about week one. This will sort of be like our lecture A or our lecture one. My plan really is, since my Monday and Wednesday course load really isn't that heavy as my Tuesday and Thursday course load, I'm thinking about every Monday to sort of have a pre-recorded video ready and loaded up before 6:30 in the evening, if not sooner. Um, so that you could get sort of a handle of what to expect maybe the first 3 days of class. And then on Wednesday to have those, the team meeting lectures, if you can make it. Now, I know some of y'all have already accepted that. Y'all are checking your student email and your Blackboard page and all that stuff. And I do understand a lot of y'all probably have to work. You got kids. That time of day may not be necessarily the best for everybody. But again, if you have any ideas, if you have a time that would work better for everybody, primarily after 9:30 on a Wednesday, I'm pretty good about it because I got another online course that I'm teaching. It's 11:02. We're having to do sort of weekly lectures also via Teams on Wednesdays. So I'm trying to gauge everybody's availability. Now, again, I can't make these things mandatory, meaning if you can't show up for whatever reason, whether it's work related, child related, illness related, or you just didn't want to come, I can't necessarily dock your grade for it, but I do want to offer these because it'll give us a chance to have that, what's really missing in the course. And what's missing in the course is that interaction that we would have had this course been a face-to-face or hybrid course. So if you can show up, I definitely strongly suggest that you do, especially if you have questions throughout the week. It'll be a time that we can ask questions. Not only you ask questions to me, I ask questions to you. You can ask questions to your classmates, that type of stuff. The way Teams is usually set up, it's set up in 30, an hour, 90-minute increments, that type deal. So even though if this class was offered, say, in a face-to-face environment, probably would last only 75 minutes. So the actual lecture time that I'm going to be doing with the Teams meeting will probably, be 60 minutes to 75 minutes, right? I'm not going to keep you there an hour and 30 minutes unless you just want to stay a little later and ask questions. If we're able to, afford that time, we can do that. Otherwise, I'm going to try to keep them about an hour, 75 minutes, something of that nature, at least to go through a good bit of the, stuff that we're doing from week to week. But again, if you have a different, if Monday's better to do a live meeting, we can, switch swap the days. We can do the videos on Wednesday and we can do the live lectures on Monday. Right now for week one, this is sort of how it's working until I figure out who all really is invested in the course, who's really enrolled in the course, and sort of what everybody's schedule is. I can tell you Tuesdays and Thursdays are not going to be a good day to do them because I'm going to be in Camden from 8 o'clock in the morning to 6:30 at night. And I'm teaching like 3 or 4 classes throughout those days. So I can just tell you, doing anything lecture-wise on Tuesdays and Thursdays are not going to work. Fridays, we're only open until about noon, and I usually don't work Fridays just because the way my contract and my schedule is set up. I usually do 10-hour days, 4 days a week. Saturday and Sunday, of course, everybody's got their own deal going on during the weekends. That's not to say we can't, have something, if it has to be something urgent on a weekend, maybe we can do something there. We just have to fit in everybody's schedule. But definitely think about a time after 9:30 on Mondays and Wednesdays. That might be better for everybody, right? It has to be the majority rules here. If not, we're probably going to sort of keep it about the same time, 11 to noon every Wednesday, unless, there's a holiday or if there's something else that's going on. Okay, so I'm basically in your Blackboard page in your week one folder. Again, if you had a chance to look at my last video that talks a little bit about introduction about how to get on the Blackboard and student email, you'll know how to get onto Blackboard by now, I hope, especially if you've had online courses before in the past. We're looking at week one, which is basically from Monday until Saturday, really, for this first week. So basically you have about 6 days, give or take, It is open a little earlier, right? It's open this week, a week before week one really starts. So you do have a little bit longer to really do week one if you want to go ahead and start earlier. You don't necessarily have to. You can wait until Monday the 24th to do it. Or like today, I'm recording it a little earlier. Today's the 18th of August. You can start doing stuff now if you wanted to. It's really up to you, as long as you get your blog exercise 1 and 2 in before the deadline. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here momentarily. So let's look at here what we have. We have some grammar exercises or some grammar handouts that deals with pages 195 through 214 in your book. Again, your book is online. You have an online textbook. You click here, it's going to take you to that. Just read 195 to 214. Now, you can, if you want, do those exercises. You're not really, I'm not holding you to them. I mean, if you want extra practice, do them, obviously. I will have some grammar practice, probably starting next week, that deals with the stuff that you're reading this week as it relates to grammar and that type of stuff. So if you want to do the grammar practice in your book, you can. I think there might be some answers in the back, or what I say the back, the very sort of the last few pages of the book. But if not, you can always email me and ask, or if you are able to show up during Wednesday's meeting next week, you can talk about some of the issues you might be having with the grammar. We're going to look at the narrative and descriptive essay. We're going to start that off first, because if you look, we're going to look at our essay 1 topic, and essay 1 deals with the narrative and descriptive essay. So what I'm going to do is pull up that particular document. What is a narrative or descriptive essay? Well, a narrative is basically telling a story. You usually tell a story in a chronological, right? You start with point A, you go to point B, you go to point C, or you start with 1, 2, 3, first, second, third. Generally, anything that you've read in the past, or anything that you have, currently watch on TV, if it's TV or a movie, has a narrative. It tells a story. It starts at a beginning, has a middle, has an end. That's sort of how you want to structure your particular essay, that it has a beginning, middle, and end. So you want to sort of answer some of these questions that I've highlighted here, right? What happened? What did it? When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who did it? What does it look like? What are the characteristics? What impression does it make? So you're really looking at the big idea would be the significance of the story. So in some ways, I know these couple paragraphs here talk about the difference between an academic narrative and descriptive essay and a creative nonfiction descriptive and narrative essay. You want to sort of make this one not as stuffy as a traditional academic paper, even though this sort of says you still need to have the thesis statement and the dominant impression, which you do, right? The thesis statement usually is the main idea of your entire paper, which communicates that dominant impression. And we talk a little bit more about that because really what it says here, the dominant impression is that whole picture, right? What you're trying to convey in your writing, what you're trying to show rather than tell your reader. So think about when you're writing, when you pick one of those essay 1 topics, and again, we'll look at some of those here in a minute, you want to create a movable picture in my mind, or really, for that matter, anybody who picks up your essay and reads it, they want to create sort of like a moving picture, like they're watching a mini movie of some sort. You want to be, descriptive, but you don't want to be too descriptive, right? You want to use your 5 senses. You want to describe how something tastes if you're going to a restaurant. If you're going out, let's say, to the beach, you want to talk about how the sand feels between your toes, or how the water smells, or how hot or how cold maybe the water or the wind is. So you want to use your 5 senses. You want to be careful about overly doing with adverbs and adjectives. Those are good when describing, but it comes to a point where sometimes you can overdo it and add a lot of descriptive words when you don't really need to. So that's where a lot of the proofreading, the peer reviewing, the drafting is going to come into play, right? You're going to have, nearly 2 weeks or so to do this paper. to send me drafts, to send maybe possibly each other if you want to sort of create a buddy system within the class. You can also send it to Smart Thinking, which I talked a little bit about that in my introduction video. But you want to keep in mind, right? You want to sort of, are you trying to persuade the reader on something? Are you trying to entertain the reader on something? And generally with a narrative, you are trying to entertain, right? You're trying to give a story. You're telling a story in a way that enlightens or entertains the reader. In this case, it would be me, because ultimately I want to be grading it. You want to sort of keep in mind that you may have conflict in your narrative or descriptive writing. And you know, think about any of the good movies you have watched lately. Every good movie has some sort of conflict. So you want to be careful that you're not doing too much of conflict, but you're giving enough, right, to keep the story moving. There's a plot there, right? We're sort of, again, going from that exposition stage up to the rising action, to the climax, to the falling action, to the resolution stage. So it's sort of like the basic plot structure or literary element structure you would see in any kind of short story. So in some ways, you can say you're writing a short story, but it's more like maybe flash fiction here, because you don't have to write, 4 or 5 pages. We're going to look at the word count and the page length here momentarily when we look at the topics. You want to think about suspension or suspense and tension, right? How much is too much? You want to have a pace, right? Do you need to start off really slow? Does it sort of need to start off in the middle of the action? Does it need to be fast paced? The other thing is that you can kind of think about is adding character dialogue. Anybody and everybody can be a character in this particular writing, right? Your dog could have a speaking part. Your mother can have a character part in it. And a lot of times dialogue moves the story along, because, I mean, think about going to a movie whenever they will start reopening again. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later, because there hasn't been too many movies come out after February of this year, as we know, because of the virus. But let's say you go to the movie is usually an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours long. If they take out all the characters and all the dialogue and all the speaking parts, you just have what? Well, you have scenery and music. Why would you pay $10 to go just see really a live version of a picture, right, with nothing else going on? So sometimes you need to have characters in your particular narrative and descriptive essay. Does that mean that you have to have all characters all the time? No. You yourself, as being the narrator, is one character. I would probably say, with the scope of the paper that you're going to have to write, like 2 or 3 pages or so, I'd probably keep, maybe 2 or 3 major characters. I wouldn't try to be like Shakespeare's Hamlet and have about 50 characters where about 40 of them die at the end of the play. But, use common sense and keep sort of the major ones that really apply if you need to use dialogue. I will tell you, there is a certain way that you have to structure and style dialogue as it relates to the grammar and the language and that type of stuff. And if you do have characters that have speaking parts, I can show you how to style that so you're not getting points taken away. You would just need to start sending me drafts early on so we can talk a little bit about that. Or I can, maybe do a group meeting on how to do dialogue. If you look too, sometimes you can begin your narrative with a anecdote. And again, here it gives you sort of a definition from a literary handbook. Anecdote is a short narrative account of an amusing, unusual, revealing or interesting event. A good anecdote has a single definite point, and the setting, dialogue, and characters are usually subordinate to the point of the story. Usually the anecdote does not exist alone, but is combined with other materials such as, exploratory essays or arguments, or expositionary essays as well. So again, you can start off with an anecdote maybe if you need that, because again, a lot of times where it says here in the big quotations, there's power in the details. So you can be really detail oriented. if need be, with this first essay. But again, you don't want to be so bogged down on, one particular thing that you can't, progress your story from page 1 to page 2. The big thing that you're going to have to keep in mind, again, sort of that moving picture, that vivid portrait, is that you want to really concentrate on showing and not telling. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, once I start seeing some drafts come in, if there's some problems with that. The difference between showing and telling is like, you're telling your reader you're going to Walmart to buy bread. Okay, well, that's not really, entertaining or interesting, because most of us do that on a day-to-day basis. But if you show us, right, you say that, person A got into a old Chevy 1967 truck that's beat up, half the doors falling off, whatever the case may be, you're adding more descriptive words. Maybe the inside of that particular Chevy smells like gas and oil because it's really old and it leaks. So you're using some of your 5 senses there. So you're giving something that's going to show us more in a picture sense or a movie sense than just giving us a flat sentence and say, well, Bob gets in his 1967 old Chevy and drives to Walmart, which is only 5 minutes away. Again, that's not really creative. Most people do that on a day-to-day basis. And it's not really entertaining, right? So just be careful about how you style your sentences, how you structure stuff with this narrative descriptive essay. Some literary devices, if you went through high school, which I'm assuming most of y'all have, you've probably taken a literature or a poetry class that deals with like similes and metaphors and that type of stuff. So you can apply a lot of that figurative language, especially if you're a creative writer already, like you like to write a lot of songs or poetry. You can use some of that stuff to help be creative here, because really we start off with the creative aspect of writing and move more into the technical academic, because if you can write creatively, you can mold yourself to sort of use the same tools and techniques to write professionally and academically. So as we tell through the weeks, right, we go from the narrative, the descriptive essay, we go to, comparative essay. So we're getting more from being creative to more professional. So it's a step in progress, right? You go from 1 week to the next to build up. So by the time you really leave this class, you should be able to still have the aspect of the creative writing of the course with the professional formal writing of the course too. So it should give you like a well-rounded, best of both worlds type experience as it relates to writing what we do, the type of writing and genre writing that we do in a 1010 here. Again, you want to be careful what they call here adjective stacking. That's just using a lot of adjectives. You sort of are getting really syrupy or dripping with them like they have here, right? The gooey, drippy, moldy summer of last year was one to remember, right? There's a lot of different adjectives going on there. You got gooey, you got drippy, you got moldy. You could have just maybe used 1 or 2, right? Or find a synonym that really would match that whole deal there. So just be careful about overusing adjectives or stacking them up 1 to 1, right? One against the other. This is sort of the checklist. And I'm not really going to belabor this so much here because I want to look at some other stuff here that's in week 1. But in some ways, you are creating that vivid portrait, that movable picture. So when you're writing your paper, when you're looking at your particular paragraphs and essays, this is sort of a good checklist to come back and look at, right? Your naming, right? Is it a exact physical feature? Is it a behavior, personality trait? Detailing, do you have a dominant impression? Again, if you don't have that dominant impression or that thesis statement, really the last sentence of your introduction paragraph, your essay is going to fall short, or it's really going to run out of gas by the time you get to the top of page 2, because you don't really have a main point. You're just writing for the sake of writing, which you may think you're getting somewhere, but if you don't have a point of your particular story or a significance of your story, then you're just wasting your time for having to write it out and type it. And I'm just going to be wasting my time of reading it and trying to grade it, because that sort of is the main issue. One of the main issues is to have that thesis statement, that dominant impression. If you don't have it, then your paper is not going to get a better, not going to get any higher than a C. So just make sure that you have that going on. And that's why you have a couple weeks, right? If you need help to really refine that dominant impression or that thesis statement, send me drafts. We can work together to get you to the point where you have a good working thesis statement, a good working dominant impression that you can build your paper around. Using figurative language like comparing similes and metaphors, you can apply that. You don't necessarily have to. It just sort of spices up your writing a little bit. Dialogue, again, quoted material, summarized from characters. Again, if you want to add dialogue, if you think you need it, if it fits for your particular purpose, by all means do so. But you want to keep the scope, right? You want to know the scope or the length of your paper in mind, because this is, really flash fiction, I guess you can call it. You don't want to be writing a novella here. You're not trying to write 30 or 40 pages. You're trying to keep it within the scope of the assignment, and we're going to look at that scope here momentarily. All right, so let's look at the actual essay topic and what's really expected here. So again, this is your narrative descriptive essay. It's there on your Blackboard page within your week 1 folder. I give you some general guidelines here. So it's due on the 13th of September, which if you look, the 13th, which is nearly 3 weeks or 21 days from when we start on the 24th. So you have that amount of time to get a 2 to 4 page paper or 500 or 1,000 words typed up and written. So you want to use the MLA 8 format. You want to double space. You want to use Times New Roman 12 font. And you want to have 1-inch margins all the way around. And I will probably give you several examples of how to do that or go about doing that. If you look at what's sort of later on our week 1 page, there's some page numbers in your actual OER textbook that take you to 1, a student narrative paper, and 2, a descriptive essay. Both are really Model A papers. So if you look at those two and see what they're doing, I think there's also a couple of little hyperlinks below that, more so like an academic or professional examples of narratives and descriptive writing. If you look at those as well, you will have, 2 or 3 different models for the narrative and 2 or 3 different models of the descriptive essay that sort of, blend yours together to make yours come alive. And they all will be Model A papers. I don't show anybody, a model paper that's less than a 9. Excuse me, because everybody's wanting to strive for that A. So I only show A quality work because that's what you want to do. That's what I want to read. And it's a lot better if I show you A quality work. And that's where, your drafts will come into play. You're going to start off, a lot of your drafts are going to be, D's and F quality, which is expected. Don't give up, right? That's why I'm giving you 21 days to send me drafts. Send me as many drafts as it takes for you to get your grade. If you just want to get the C and sort of just pass on by, then don't send me but maybe 2 or 3 drafts. If you want the B, that's the only thing that you have time for because everything else is going on within these next 3 weeks, then, send me 7 or 8 drafts. If you want the A, then maybe it's 9 or 10. It all really depends on your quality of writing at this point and how much essay writing you've done over the last few years. If, you're just coming out of school, or if you're somebody that likes to write on a daily basis, you may just need to, send me 2 or 3 drafts and be okay with your A or B at that point. But for somebody that's been out of school for 15, 20 years, have a hard time typing, that type of stuff, you may have to send more drafts. So that's why I would definitely send drafts to Smart Thinking probably first. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. as things start to come up and running again next week. But I would definitely send them a draft. I would send me a draft. Anybody that you can get to look at your essays outside of class. I mean, really, the more pairs of eyes that look at your work, the better. And that's generally, most folks that take this class or take my upper level classes, I stress the drafts. And usually when they say, well, after I had a lot of people look at my paper, I realized, one, that it was good to do that, because I start seeing the mistakes that I wasn't seeing just by looking at it myself. And usually they get the higher grade, not only on that particular paper, but they come out overall the semester with one of the higher grades in the class. So there's benefits in submitting drafts. Again, they're optional, but they're strongly recommended. So if you look here, again, the length is 2 to 4 pages or 500 to 1,000 words. So again, if you get to your first page and you're at 500 words, but you sort of addressed one of these 3 topics as fully as you can, and you feel confident about what you have down on paper, then you can stop at 500 words. If you get to, let's say, 3 pages and you're not at 500 words, then you probably want to go to page 4. So again, you want something that's not going to be only one particular page, right? Because you're probably not going to be able to tell a really good story, a narrative or descriptive aspect of your essay in one page. But at the same time, you don't want to go to pages 5, 6, and 7 and that type of stuff, because I want to be able to chance to really read and give feedback. So I would say 2 to 4 pages will be enough for this particular assignment. As you know, when we start going from essay 1 to essay 2, the page length and the word count is going to go up a little bit. And the reason why I'm doing that is when we get to sort of our final essay or major essay, which is the research paper, that needs to be about 6 to 8 pages, right? So you would need to be able to learn how to pace yourself to write multiple paragraphs, because with this narrative descriptive paper, you can think of it as a 5-paragraph essay, maybe. That's what you learn in middle school. That's what you learn in high school. Really, at the college level, we don't like that, because it sort of constructs what you can think outside, right? I mean, it sort of puts change and stuff around your creative juices and your thinking. So when you think of essay 2, instead of maybe writing 5 paragraphs, you may have to write 8 paragraphs to be able to get the word count or the page limit. I can tell you with the research paper, you're probably going to need at least to write 12 to 20 paragraphs to be able to get the 6 to 8 pages. So you're moving beyond that hamburger essay, right? And that's where your writing needs to be when you leave this class. You need to be able to write longer. You need to be able to write, confident. You need to be able to write, with more words, that type of deal. So if you look at our 3 topics, 1, right, seeing an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, think over your reaction when first saw this person and after a long time. When you first saw this person after a long time, what was your attitude to this person? Did it change with the time? How did your ex react on you? Was the place where you met this person special for you? So you're sort of giving a narrative, right? You're building a narrative with description of your ex-girlfriend or boyfriend here. Number 2, the older that you get, the more responsibilities you gain. It can be too much at times. Right about a time when you felt overwhelmed by your responsibilities, how did you handle it? Well, everybody at some point, as they become an adult and as they mature, have more responsibilities they have to do in life. For some, it's becoming mom or dad for the first time and trying to balance that with school or work. Sometimes it could be you're gaining another promotion, right? You're moving up in the company. That usually comes with more responsibilities that could be stressful, especially if you got other things going on outside, right? You're still attending school or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of different directions you can go with number 2. And of course, with number 3, I usually offer everybody sort of a writer's choice, meaning if you don't like 1 and 2 and you have something that can fit the narrative and descriptive genre, like you're trying to write, right, in this particular essay 1, then I strongly suggest that you email me or that we talk, whether it's, by phone, by email, or, through one of these Teams meetings on Wednesday, what you plan on doing with this first paper. Because one, I want to know that you're going to have enough that's going to get me to the 4 pages. And plus, I want to see sort of your thinking pattern. How are you going to take me from page 1 to page 2, page 3? Is it going to be really a good narrative with good descriptive, right? Otherwise, if you really can't think of a topic that fits that, then I would definitely strongly suggest picking either 1 or 2. And that's where really, after doing some of your OER reading this week that deals with narrative and deals with descriptive, that you're looking at those sample essays to sort of get an idea. Because when we talk about blog exercise 1 and 2, you're really by the time we get to Wednesday or Thursday, you need to go ahead and pick a topic so you can go ahead and start brainstorming and, providing a working thesis statement or dominant impression, providing an outline, looking at some of the demographics. Who's your audience, right? You want to think of purpose. You want to think of who the aim is, the characters, the audience, that type deal. So let's look and see what else we got here. Some of the grammar, the sentence kind, and again, I'm just going to briefly look at this because I know you can read a lot of this stuff. This is more or less sort of like a Cliff Note version of what you would read in your book. So if you're looking for something really quick to look at, because some of y'all probably already know the 4 kinds of sentences, right? We have a declarative sentence, makes a statement, conveys information, and it ends with a period, right? So you see your 2 examples here. You see how it makes a statement, conveys information, there's a period. Interrogative sentences usually ask a question. They usually have that question mark at the end. We know how at any time that you ask a question, right, you're basically speaking or writing an interrogative sentence. Number 3, imperative, which is also known as command. That means you give a command, or your sentence gives an order, directive. Anytime you tell your children to stop talking, right, you're giving an imperative sentence. Or if you're telling a stray dog to get out of your yard, right, you're giving sort of a order or directive or a command. And a lot of it depends on too. You can modify it by giving more of a softer tone, by giving a request or asking for a request, giving a request. That way, exclamatory usually ends with an exclamation point. It's usually a strong statement of opinion or warning. So you can kind of look at our examples here. Don't answer the phone, right? This is my favorite part of the movie. So that's usually the 4 basic functions of a sentence, 4 kinds of sentences. You've been writing these probably ever since, you've been in the 1st or 2nd grade. You've been speaking them probably since that long anyway. Basic sentence patterns. You have sort of what it says here, one of 4 patterns. You have the simple sentence, which again usually contains 1 independent clause. And usually what they mean by independent clause, they mean a complete thought. So the sentence has a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. So if you look here, I sort of labeled that Matt is the subject, plays is the verb. Here, though, when we look at B, we have Matt and Caro, which is really a compound subject, but we still have a complete subject and a complete verb in being play. If you look here, we have, again, the compound subject, Matt and Caro, and then we got 2 verbs. Well, you can have that, right? You can have a compound subject, compound verb, play and drink. Compound sentence is usually made up of 2 or more independent clauses. The clauses may be joined by what they call coordinating conjunction or a semicolon. Now, a lot of times you might have heard this coordinating conjunction as fanboys, maybe in high school or middle school. And basically the fanboys is an acronym for and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So as you can tell here with these 2 sentences, usually there's a comma before the fanboy, like in this case, comma and, comma but make sure too that if you do use a comma and a fanboy, that what comes after that is a complete thought. And as you can tell here, we do have a complete sentence because we have Kendra subject, paid is the verb, the rest of it sort of completes the thought. but this particular sentence is a compound sentence because we do have an independent clause. This is our independent clause here. We have a subject, we have a verb, we have something that connects it, which is that fanboy coordinating conjunction, and then we have our additional independent clause. So we basically have two complete sentences here, which is basically what the criteria is for this particular part of the sentence. Same thing with the second example. And the only difference is that they use a contrasting word here, contrasting fanboy with comma but. Complex sentence has one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses introduced by subordinate conjunction. So if you look here, we have a complete clause, right, up until we have vocation. And then we have while, which is that subordinate conjunction. And then we have our, our second complete sentence, because we have brother and stayed as our subject and verb there. If you look at our next sentence, we have sort of the same thing. In this case, instead of having the subordinate conjunction in the middle like it did in this previous example, we have the comma but, which is another contrasting fanboy, because in this case is your subordinate conjunction. And then, of course, as you can tell here, we have subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb. So that's what makes that more of a complex sentence. Compound complex. Sentence combines the features of sentence patterns 2 and 3 above. That is, it contains two or more independent clauses together on one or more dependent clauses. So this is sort of how you build on your sentence structure as well. Because a lot of folks will say, well, I don't know how I want to write more than 5 paragraphs because that's all I've been doing. Well, you start mixing and matching some of these different sentence patterns, right? From the simple to the compound to the complex to the compound complex. You'll be writing those lengthy, long paragraphs before you know it. And you just want to make sure that you're spicing things up, right? You're not using the same simple sentences, for 3 pages, or you're not just always doing compound complex sentences. You want to have a balance there. Here, we talk a little bit more about parts of a sentence. Really, to have a complete sentence, you need to have a subject or a predicate, which is another word for verb. As you can tell here, the subject is a sentence is usually a noun or pronoun, or phrase or clause used as a noun. So this is really good about how they give the diagram of how to look at sentences here. The verb is the word or phrase that tells the reader what the subject is or does. So again, you can kind of look at these diagrams that help you out there. Direct object is the noun or pronoun that names the receiver of the action. So in this case, Matt passed the puck. Puck is your direct object. It usually comes at the end, because when you talk about indirect objects like we see here in number 4, it basically a noun or pronoun that tells to whom someone is, was, will be done. The indirect object normally comes before the direct. So as you can tell here, again, we have Matt, who's our subject. Our predicate or verb is past. Our indirect object is Caro. And of course, again, the puck is our direct object. And then the last bit of it, we have objects of the preposition. Is a noun or pronoun that follows a preposition in a prepositional phrase. So keep in mind, sometimes words like to, about, and for act as prepositions. When you use them together, they're prepositional phrases. But if you look here, Caro here is that object of the preposition. Complement is a noun or pronoun or modifier that explains, renames, or describes the subject of a linking verb. And again, they give me an example here using is, seems, appears, smells, and taste. And again, they sort of give you in the parentheses what each sentence, how it's acting as a complement. So this one, captain is, right? Who is the captain of the team? Well, it's Caro. So it's basically a noun complement. Pronoun, the gold, and the game are ours, right? Because the pronoun there in this case is are. Adjective complement, the crowd went wild. How did the crowd go? Well, it went wild. So in a nutshell, that's sort of what you're going to be learning this week when you look at some of the grammar in your OER book. Let's see how much time we got here. The sample essays, again, you're going to have to read those in your OER book. I give you the page numbers. If you look, they're really not that long. 92 to 94 is about 2 pages. 96 to 98 is about 2 pages. So you have about 4 to 5 pages of what your essays should look like when you start writing your essay 1. Let's briefly take a look at the blog exercises. You got exercise 1, which is due this Thursday, which when you look at this would be Thursday the 27th by 11:59. And then you got blog exercise 2, which would be due by 11:59 on Saturday the 29th. So to be able to go and look at your blog exercises, you're going to have to click on this particular link, and it's going to pull up. Right now, you can go ahead and you might be able to see exercise 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 deal mainly with week 2. So if you think you can feel confident, if you want to go ahead and knock out exercise 3 and 4 for next week, you can go ahead and do that. Chances are you might need to wait until that folder opens up just to see some of the reading and what you have to do. But if you notice, all 4 of these exercises sort of have something related to your essay 1. So really by Tuesday or Thursday, you need to have an essay 1 topic chosen to be able to do these exercises effectively. So you'd want to click on the exercise 1. I give you some page numbers to look at in your book. Again, in this case, it's 44 through 53. Pick a pre-writing method you like and apply it to your topic choice for essay 1. So remember, these blog writing assignments are worth about a quiz grade, so they're 10%. So you don't want to be, blowing them off too often. Otherwise, it's going to be like losing 10 points each week that we have them. So do the reading on pages 44 through 53. And again, you can find that in your textbook. And what we mean by pre-writing method, right? Like listing, outlining, bubble map, double bubble, that type stuff. But to be able to do this effectively, you're going to have a topic chosen before you submit this. So, like I said, either you want to pick the topic 1, topic 2, or you want to choose your own topic as long as it relates to narrative and descriptive. And what you would have to do is go up here and hit create the blog and then start typing, right? Give me sort of your pre-writing method that you're trying to use. It doesn't necessarily have to be really long and lengthy. I just need to see that you're sort of interacting with your own topic and you're starting to brainstorm a little bit. If we go back to exercise 2, which again, exercise 1 is due on Thursday by midnight. Exercise 2 will be due on Saturday by midnight. And again, I give you some page numbers to look in your textbook, 44 through 53. And you want to look at, by the time you should already have completed exercise 1, you want to talk about a outline method and create an outline to your essay 1. So I want to see sort of where you plan on going. This is what you're going to do in paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4. So if you look at pages 44 through 53 in your textbook, it gives you sort of a sample outline that you can use. Now you can use one that's really traditional and formal, or you can kind of use one that's not so traditional and formal. But I need to see the progression, right? I need to see from going from brainstorming techniques to, okay, now I'm going to take what I've learned in brainstorming and I'm going to apply it to this outline. And this is how I'm going to structure my paper from here on out. That's sort of what I'm looking for. And really, I grade these really at a 4-point criteria. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that when we have our next virtual lecture via Teams, how I'm going to grade these blog exercises. And being that they're 10%, yeah, it's a low number, but we have enough of them that if you don't do so well, let's say on 7 or 8 of them, it really will impact your grade in a negative way. So I'm going to give you sort of the criteria that what I'm going to be looking for as it relates to your grades. It's really easy to get, 100 on these. You should be able to get 100 on these. Those that just, don't get the grade that they want, meaning they get the 50s or 60s or 40s, are the ones that just don't do anything. They don't read the instructions. They don't do the reading. They don't pick a topic in time. They don't send stuff on time. So these blog assignments really are supposed to help get your juices flowing in the meantime, give you some free 100s to some degree. I mean, you still got to put the work and the effort through them. But they will help as it relates to you have 21 days to do this essay. You're not just waiting until day 20 to sort of come up with 4 pages, which is never really good. Going back to our lesson page, I think that's pretty much it for right now. I will, again, probably see y'all on next, this coming Wednesday when we have our lecture. And you can ask questions then. I hope everybody has a good first half of the week. And I will see everybody Wednesday, and hopefully everybody have a good overall first week, not only for this class, but for your other classes as well. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you on Wednesday. Thanks.